Okay, great. So I'll go ahead and get started. Hi everyone. Thank you all so much for coming today. This is YouthServe NYC's 13th speaker. And like I always say, just to remind everyone, YouthServe NYC is a service initiative founded and run by young people who want to become more involved in the work of rebuilding New York City in the wake of the COVID-19 crisis. YouthServe NYC is a way to engage peers in service and in social justice. Today, we are so happy and fortunate to welcome Tony Hillery, who is the executive director and founder of Harlem Grown. Founded in 2011, Harlem Grown is an independent, nonprofit organization that seeks to inspire youth to lead healthy and ambitious lives. So thank you again for joining us today. We are so excited to hear about your work at Harlem Grown and anything else that you'd like to share. And just to remind everyone, later when we do questions, if you have any, you can just type them in the Q&A function or chat me independently, and then I will read them aloud. So thank you so much, and over to you.
Well, thank you so much for having me. Sorry, my voice is a little hoarse. And I'm number 13. That's a very good number. But a little about me. My name is Tony Hillery. I was born in Wiesbaden, Germany. My dad was a major in the Air Force. And I lived a very comfortable life. I lived in the suburbs. I summered out in Long Island my whole life. And I made some horrible decisions in life. I was the first in my family not to go to college, and I kind of failed upwards in life. I had a few businesses. Each one got better than the next. Then I really kind of hit it with, I had a personalized transportation company in the city, and moved my family from Queens out to the suburbs. And I have 3 adult children. They all went to private school, kindergarten, and college. And all that time, my definition of poverty was just not having any money. I was so far away from the plight of so many that honestly, right now, I feel embarrassed when I talk about it. Because we see it all over, but we really don't know what it is. So about 10 years ago, the last national crisis was the fiscal crisis. It hit me like everybody else. And I'm sitting right here where I'm talking to you right now. And I'm losing business, freaking out, and I'm reading about schools. And what I was reading didn't compute. We're in the richest city in the country. And you're telling me 15 minutes from where I live, where everything is beautiful, there are these schools that have no access to anything. I couldn't believe it. So one day I walked in off the street to volunteer, and it opened my eyes and changed my life. I walked into an elementary school in central Harlem where I was shocked to find all the kids in that school go to school for their academics and their nutrition as well. There's no art in school. There was no gym in school. There was no music in school. And that was in school. Outside of the building, you're surrounded with need everywhere you looked. And it really kind of shook me to my core to find out the numbers that make this up. 10 years ago, I was shocked to find that there were 60,000 homeless children in New York City. 60. 10 years later, there's 114,000 homeless children in New York City, and most of them live in communities like where I work. And that really, really bothered me because those 2 words don't belong together. Homeless children. When you think homeless, we all have the same image. Homeless children, what is that? So I learned very quickly that there are a lot of people with some very hard choices and decisions to make every day. And again, in hindsight, I do feel kind of guilty for not realizing this a long time ago, because like most of us, I'm doing okay. Everything is okay, but it's not. So, excuse me. So I started working in this school and I met this group of children. It was an elementary school that goes pre-K to fifth. So that's 5 to 11 years old. And you guys, you know how it is when you go home. You know, dad's home. Oh God, dad's home. That's what I get at my house too. But when I go to work, it's like I'm the president of the United States when I walk into these schools. These kids lose their mind. Mr. Tony, and they come and they hug you. And that really was like gnawing at me. What is that? What is that? I'm not bearing gifts. I'm not buying anybody. I just show up. And that's the one thing that's missing in these communities is consistency, because so many things are interchangeable. If you're living in a shelter, you go to another shelter, another school, another caseworker, and this is someone's whole life. And it just really got me that I looked at these kids and I saw my kids with different faces. And I had this audacious idea that with equal access and with equal opportunity, these children can thrive just like my kids without all the private school and all the other things that I had to do. And I just started showing up. And when you show up, you can't help but see the plight of others. I mean, it's no turning away from it. There's no anecdotal solutions for everything. You see it up close. And for instance, this one school where I was working, we had 14 homeless shelters in a 4-block radius of that one school, 9 of which were domestic violence shelters where kids went to that school. And in the same radius, in a 3-block radius, we have over 50 fast food restaurants and 29 pharmacies and no affordable food options. And that's where everything kind of crystallized. Because, forgive me, when you walk in and you watch someone eating Doritos for breakfast and washing it down with a Pepsi, that's because they missed breakfast. They came in a few minutes late. And it's easy for me to say, oh, just eat healthy. What is healthy? So as fate would have it, this one school right across the street was an abandoned community garden. And I called the city. They told me how to get a permit. I did. And then they gave it to me. And it was a junkyard. It was full of trash. So after breakfast, working with the kids, I'd go across the street and clean out, go back and do lunch. And the kids would watch me from the windows. After 2-3 days, when school let out at 2:20, the kids would come and help me. 6 weeks it took us to clear all the trash. And this little girl looks at me and says, so why don't we plant something? I'm okay, let's plant. And that was the genesis of the whole thing, is because when I was in the lunchroom watching the diet, and you talk to children about food, they are so disconnected from food. It's a very disposable existence. Everything is takeout, everything is throwaway. And kids there, they wouldn't even taste something green. Anything green goes in the trash. And once we got the garden and they started growing it, you see all the kids who plant something, they would eat what they planted. And it's amazing, 80% of them would like what they ate. But then the irony is you can't buy what we grow in that community at affordable prices. So that's what spurred the whole movement. That first year, 10 years ago, this is our 10-year anniversary this September. That first crop was 38 pounds. The year before COVID, we did 6,000 pounds. Everything is free with cooking lessons, demonstrations, and tastings, and simple recipe writing. And then the kids go home and tell the parents they know how to cook, but they need these ingredients. So we're trying to create demand from the bottom up, because when we go into these stores that sell all this processed poison, they will carry fresh produce, but there has to be a market for it. They're not going to put it on the shelves and have to throw it away in 3 days if no one buys it. So we're trying to create the demand from the bottom. And another story of that is some of the older children who started that program with me 10 years ago, the 4th and 5th graders, 7 of them are all first generation in 4-year universities thanks to this program. So it is a really bottom-up approach of change through the lens of food justice and food access. I know it sounds really wide-ranging, but so is the problem of poverty. It's not a simple solution with poverty like we think there is. Oh, just give them money. No. There are other things that have to take place there. So we hire from the community as well. Young people a few years older than the children that I serve from that community. And we pay fair wages with healthcare and upward mobility, but you start on the farm and you work your way up. And this is how we change communities. It's not just the food, but it has to be meaningful work, healthcare, all of these things that we all seek. It's no different from the less fortunate neighborhoods. And it's really disheartening that in the richest city in the country, your health outcomes, your life expectancy, everything is dictated by your zip code. And that has to change. And meeting people like yourself, a fellow founder, young people who want to make change, that is huge in our quest for changing the status quo, because it has to change. It has to. And how am I on time?
That was great. We have plenty of time left. We have around 15 minutes left. If you'd like to continue, you can. If not, we can start with some questions. Up to you.
No, any other thing, everybody can look us up. You go to our website. It tells the deeper story if you want to dive a little deeper. And I invite anyone listening to come up and see the work. You're invited anytime. We're there every day. And with that, I will open up for questions, please.
Great, thank you. So I'll start with some of my own, and then everyone else can just feel free to put them in the Q&A function or in the chat. Okay, so the first one is Harlem Grown has now existed for 10 years, like you said, since its founding in 2011. And so are there any ways that your work has really changed over the years? Obviously the outcomes have, but any specific ways you actually do the work?
Yes, it changes constantly. As I said, from a distance, things look simple, but when you're there on the ground, you see how complicated things get. Take, for instance, COVID. When COVID hit, all of our kids go to school for food and they close school. What to do? So we had to pivot on a dime to address that. And we rallied a couple of closed restaurants in Harlem and bought tens of thousands of meals and delivered them to our families who are less fortunate. Because at the same time they closed the schools, they deemed the parents essential employees who have to work in the middle of a pandemic with no health care. They can't call out or they'll lose their job. So it was like a perfect storm of need. And I was never more proud of my staff, the way we responded to that.
Great, thank you. Okay, so just adding on to that question, how do you look to build or grow Harlem Grown looking towards the future?
Well, as next week I move out of this role, I will no longer be the executive director. Our board of directors has honored me with a new position, founder, CEO, and we just hired a new executive director who takes over June 7th. And together we will chart that next course. But in my heart of hearts, in 10 years, there should be no need for Harlem Grown, because what we really do through our farms, not just teach nutrition, education, healthy habits, sustainability. We try to empower the children to be the advocates to change their own communities. There's this tendency of well-intended people like myself who live in pockets of privilege in the suburbs. We parachute into a community like Harlem, airlift out at the end of the day. And doing that for a decade, you see that that's not really needed. What's needed is the education and the empowerment to empower the community to do it for themselves. And then we kind of dissipate and just slowly exit stage left. That's my dream. I know it's really far-fetched in reality because the numbers don't allow that, but that's what I would like.
Thank you. Okay, I'll get to the one in the Q&A chat in a little bit, but so can you talk a little bit about your different programs? Your website mentions Saturdays on the Farm, summer camp, and educational farm tours. So if you could just talk a little bit about what each one does.
Okay, well, more importantly, what the website doesn't touch is similar to what I did 10 years ago. The young people that we hire from that community, we train them to be in-school mentors. So they get mediation training, conflict resolution. They become full-time monitors, if you will, in the lunchroom, who works breakfast and lunch every day. They become a consistent presence, mentors, and through them, we bring in our educators who come in and do nutrition classes, tasting, and cooking demos in the classroom every week. So what I described to you that I did 10 years ago, we do that every day in 6 partner schools in Harlem. And that's our touch point. Because you know how when you see someone every day, they become very familiarized. We're not teachers, administrators, or disciplinarians, we're just us. And we create these bonds that really have the kids just flock to us. And that's the most important. But then of course, Saturday on the Farm, summer camp is our signature program. We normally have 100 kids, all underwritten by us, because how do you charge poor people for anything? So if you qualify for free breakfast and lunch, you qualify for free programming from us. And we have them 7 weeks, very intensive, hands-on. We're going to start, we have to suspend it last year, obviously, but this year we had to scale it down with the numbers. So we're going to have 50 kids starting July 6th. And hopefully it'll be the best summer these kids ever had.
Great. Okay. So one of them, the questions in the chat is similar to one I'm about to ask. So I'll just combine those two. But again, on your website, you list many different partners, including well-known brands and companies like Patagonia and Robinhood, Newman's Own, et cetera. Can you talk a little bit about each of these partners? What do they do and how do you reach them?
That's the best question. I don't leave my house to go to work every day to raise money. So I just want to preface it by that. Early on in this formation of this organization, we have a 501c3 status, which makes us a charitable organization. But I don't operate like a charity. I mean that to say money is needed, but money is not everything. So I learned early on when corporations come to us, because they come to us, corporate responsibility is all the rage, and they come with checks in hand. Checks alone don't change a thing here. So I asked them to hold on to that check. And how about your employees to come volunteer with our kids on the farm? Because when you're living in the conditions that I described, everyone you know are living just like you. So where are the examples of success? Success doesn't come as a wave of a wand and boof, you're gonna be it. You have to see it. You have to be introduced to it, right? So we meet these corporations and we ask them, do you want to be a donor or a partner? And they ask, well, what's the difference? A donor, you give me a check. I give you a receipt. That's it. It's a transaction. Partners, we identify common goals and we try to tackle them together. So with that, we get multi-year commitments on funding. They open their doors for our kids. They are on our farms working with our kids. They sponsor all the events. And that's for my elementary school. My older kids, as they grow up, we get them paid internships or fellowships in these areas where normally they have no access. And that is our secret sauce, is our partners. We're only as good as our partners.
Thank you. Okay, going towards one in the chat. So this person says, I just wanted to say that you have a really amazing program and congrats on your 10-year anniversary. What's your favorite thing about Harlem and your favorite moment across your work in Harlem growing?
My favorite thing in Harlem is the resiliency. We all have our preconceived notions of communities, such as just by the name, when you have an association, Harlem, you think bad and this and that. It is the most resilient community, regardless of what's going on, how the community rallies around themselves. In the beginning, I felt very strange as I'm not from there, nor do I live there. But showing up there every day, my staff and I are welcomed with such love every day and support of our work. And case in point, one of our sites we bought, and I spent $1 million on this site. It's home to one of the most sophisticated vertical hydroponic systems you've ever seen, totally off grid, using rainwater and solar power. We've had no vandalism or theft there in 3 years. And the security is a little bicycle lock on the gate. No dumping in the front. The community does that. And there's not a bigger sense of pride for me and our staff than to have the community be our watchdogs and have the communities be our partners, because we feed the community. And it's so simple on its face, but I think if it wasn't done the way we did it, and someone just came there and like, here, and put it there and then walked away, I don't think that would be the case.
Thank you. Okay. Do you ever partner with similar organizations to yours for community events or other events like that?
Absolutely. This kind of work is very, very taxing. If we try to do everything, we'd be broke. We couldn't do it. So we, like, for instance, I mentioned domestic violence. Through the relationships we build with the parents, we are a resource for other resources for them. If we refer them, they'll take it as a recommendation and take it a little more seriously than if someone came and said, go here. We give them a simple, friendly suggestion and they go. And that's with food, housing, clothing, emergency this, emergency that. We work very closely with a myriad of nonprofits in this space.
Great. I think we have time for just a few more. So in terms of like the specifics of volunteering, where are the gardens if we wanted to volunteer, and what's the age requirement for volunteers?
Well, we take children as soon as they can walk, as long as they're with their parents. And 8 years old, they can come by themselves, all the way up to 100. But this week, we just doubled our limits because of the COVID restrictions being lifted. In our farm, our main farm is on 134th between Lenox and Adam Clayton. That's our largest site. We used to host hundreds of people in that site. But when COVID hit, we had to go down to 8 volunteers and our staff. But now we're up to 16. Hopefully next week we'd be up to 24. But we ask people to go on the website and fill it out, because we do ask people to be vaccinated or have a negative test within the last 48 hours for everyone's safety. And let me just add to that. We have 12 other sites within walking distance of that main site.
Okay, great. So I think we have time for one more. And this is a pretty general question, but what is your advice to young people like us who want to get involved in more public service work? In your opinion, what are the best ways to do this? And what advice do you have to people who are very committed to the city and to vulnerable New Yorkers?
I tell you, my hat goes off to you. And I want to say young people your age range, because when I was your age, I only worried about one thing, me. What am I doing? And to see this grow is heartwarming to know that you're there and help is on the way. My generation ruined this world. And you guys are here, you see that, and you're going to come fix it or help fix it. And that helps me sleep at night. But I'll tell you what, my best advice is no means maybe. Never take no for an answer. No means maybe. I have children your age, and I know your parents are probably listening, especially yours. Don't take this out of context. Every parent wants the best for their children. We want them to be doctors and lawyers, but what we really, really want is our children to be happy. Find what makes you happy and go after it. Just go after it. Don't take no for an answer. And I think you'll be very happy with the results.
Well, thank you so much. I know we're basically out of time, but this was great. The recording will be up on the website soon. Thank you to everyone who came. Thank you to you. And yeah, I think that's all the time we have for today. But thank you again.
Thank you. Let's go Knicks. That's where I lost my voice.
Okay, bye.
Bye. Thank you.